Hi, and welcome back to Mingus on Tech. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here with Michael Simon from Macworld. We're going to be talking about some things that Apple's up to, like bent iPads and earnings revenue warnings. What the hell? Stick around. Okay, so Mike, first, thanks for being here. Happy New Year.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to warn our video producer, there may be bad language here. In fact, there will be bad language here because I want to know what the hell is going on with Apple. Over the holiday break, as I'm sure you know.
Wait, what happened?
Yeah, right. Okay, well, let me tell you. Over the holiday break, Apple announced that apparently some people are getting bent iPads.
Well, they didn't really announce it. They tried to squash it.
Well,
to be honest.
okay. Let's say people who were getting these bent iPads made a big stink.
Yeah.
Apple acknowledged it and basically said that's the way they're supposed to be. They're not really bent, or if they're bent, you shouldn't worry about it.
Which is just
And I'm sorry. I just need to
crazy.
make sure that my outrage meter is pegged
no,
appropriately because my first response is, what the
Yeah, it's
Okay.
crazy. I wrote an article over the break. I called it gaslighting.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
they're
it's-
basically saying, no, it's fine. And you're looking at this thing that has
and
a
it's not
clear
fine.
curve.
Yeah, I know. The pictures you can see, it's
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's torqued, and what Apple is saying basically is that these things meet whatever parameters.
400 microns. I'm not supposed to see 400 microns. This is visible.
Yeah.
In fact, a Macworld reader sent us pictures of his, and Apple said, nope, we're not fixing it. They made him use one of the 2 instances of damage protection, accident protection,
Which costs money. When
which
you
costs
file it.
$50 or $30. I think it's 50.
Yeah.
And it takes, you only have 2
Right.
for 2 years, so it takes one away. And forget all that. They basically made him accept blame.
For what most people I think
it's-
would
it's
consider
their
to be a
problem.
flawed piece of hardware.
There's reports that I've read that people take it out of the box and it's broke and it's bent. If I spent, even if I got the cheapest one,
Yeah.
$800, I'm pulling this thing out of a box and I can see that it's bent. It ruins it for me.
Of course it does. I mean, I'm a big Apple fan. I've had Apple hardware for 20 years. I've had every version of the phone, just about every iPad, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not here just to slam Apple for slamming Apple, but
No,
I'm actually
you have one right there. Clearly, you like their products.
I do, but I'm actually stunned that a company that bases so much of what it does on the customer experience,
Absolutely.
the beauty, the joy, the magical, whatever that you get by buying something from Apple.
Totally.
That when these things start showing up, but again, it may be a small number. It doesn't matter. One is too many, and more than one is worse. When you've got something like that, and then the company comes back and says, well, yeah, it's bent, but that's okay.
And they never even issued an official statement. They
Yeah, they said they were gonna do
now. Now they have a thing on their website that talks all about this micron thing and blah blah blah. But they never came out with an official media statement that explained anything or even accepted culpability. It's crazy. And let's say it isn't a quote unquote manufacturer defect and they're arriving straight. This thing has been in the market for 2 months.
Yeah.
There is nothing that someone could be doing to abuse it to create that type of a slight bend, even if they're throwing it in a bag, which is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's a
I do that with
manufacturer
this one.
defect.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care how you slice it, how you parse it, or how you measure it. Apple should be supplying replacement devices for people who bring them into the store that have a noticeable bend. And that's it.
Okay, so my outrage meter is pegged appropriately.
I'm with you, and I can't believe that it seems to be blowing over.
Well, do we assume that there was a problem that Apple is ignoring or pretending isn't there? They fixed it, and they're hoping that eventually.
I guess, but that's not for a company like that. That you expect that from a smaller company that's going to go bankrupt by replacing. Apple can certainly afford to replace people's iPads, even if it's a big number, but it doesn't seem to be a huge number. It seems to be a relatively 1 maybe 5% of iPads.
Yeah.
That's not going to hurt Apple's bottom line. And
No,
even if it
but
does, they're dealing with enough about that anyway.
But I would think the publicity around this, I mean, this is going to give them a black eye.
Yeah,
If
a
they
little
don't think
bit.
they have a black eye now, this will come back to haunt them.
No
because,
doubt.
And I'm just surprised. I mean, really surprised that they would even. I mean, it's so.
It doesn't make sense.
It's gross.
And the people who are buying them, they're their best fans.
Right.
They're people who are running out to buy the most expensive iPad ever immediately.
Yeah.
And then Apple's looking them in the face and saying, Nope, it's fine.
Well, I guess the reason I wanted to call attention to this is because I'm concerned that it sets a precedent.
It
so
does.
that
It absolutely does.
when the next iPhone comes out and it's got a little chip in the corner, Apple can say, "Oh, that's the way we designed it.
Yeah.
That's within our tolerances."
Well, it's the same as those dead pixels way back when on the iMacs. It was
Yes.
like, I think 5 or something.
right.
Listen, man, I had one of those machines back then, and I had one
And
dead pixel.
Once
and
you see it, you
that
cannot
was it. I
unsee
could not look away. No matter what I was doing, one eye was looking
Yep.
at that pixel.
bothering you the entire
And
time.
eventually they lowered the tolerance.
Yeah, I
and they
remember you
ended
could
up fixing
could
them.
rub the screen.
Yeah, you could
do
try doing
this
that.
to try to get rid of the pixel.
It
and
never mattered. It was always there. And certain colors it didn't show up, but it drove me nuts. And back then we didn't have these millions of pixels, so
Right.
they were pretty big.
right.
Those squares were, they were noticeable.
Yeah.
And Apple had, I think it was 5 or 3 or 8, whatever it was that was below their threshold. But they eventually kind of softened to that and realized that, listen, we're selling a product, we're selling a piece of hardware, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But above all that, the Apple experience is
Exactly.
why they
Experience is the
are
word that
who
comes
they
to mind.
are.
Yeah.
And by having an iPad that's bent, you're not going to be able to overlook that. I couldn't anyway.
When it comes to iPads,
Yeah.
get bent, Apple. All right, so outrage acknowledged. Future black eye acknowledged. We'll see where this goes from here. It doesn't bode well for Apple. I don't know what they're thinking. Moving on to more recent news, Tim Cook last week put out a note, a lengthy letter, I guess, explaining that revenues were going to fall short of where Apple thought they would be for the quarter. Blamed economic slowdown and in particular China.
Yeah, that was the crux of it.
I don't
yeah.
remember anything in there about high prices.
Yeah, I
on
think he
iPhones.
left that graph out.
Do we think that that's what's going on? Do we think? I mean, I've seen some other reports from other manufacturers since then that
Yes.
say they're also having a
No,
bad
there's
quarter.
definitely a slowdown in China. There's no question, and I also think there's something to be said for the fact that we've reached somewhat of a peak. Everything has a curve,
right.
and
Even the iPhone.
smartphones have been growing. Just forget about the iPhone and just by itself. Smartphones in general have been growing and growing and growing and growing, and that premium market, it has to plateau at some point.
Right.
And it seems as though we might have reached that, but the prices are certainly helping reach that plateau.
Yeah, I think we were always going to get to the point where we've reached what they call peak iPhone.
Yeah.
But I do think that the quick run up in prices over the last couple of years with the iPhone 10 and
Yeah.
then of course the 10s and 10s Max. One of the pieces you had written for Macworld talked about, if you had bought an iPhone 10 a year and a half ago and you didn't want the larger phone, which I did, this most recent iteration of the iPhone, there wouldn't be a whole lot to it.
No, there's not much there. And I mean, I think Apple was creating the 10s for a new generation of buyers,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the same price for one. So that means the 10s Max is $1,100, which, unless you're a diehard Apple fan, that's a lot
Which
of
I used to be.
money. A lot to spend. If they would have lowered the prices, let's say the 10s was $899
Yep.
and the 10s Max was $999 and the 10R was $699.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically, that is a huge difference, and I think that there was a little bit of hubris and
Getting a little greedy.
involved in their pricing scheme this year. They saw last year and they said, "Wait a minute,
People
are
will pay
buying
this."
these things."
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people last year actually bought not the $1,000 one, but the $1,150 one,
Yeah.
because they were sold to Apple diehards. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Most of the people who bought that 10 were people who wanted to be on board with early technology, who are Apple's biggest fans.
Yeah.
It's not, the sheep or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But the Apple, more so than any other company, has a pretty large contingent of diehards who want the first thing, they want it now, and they're going to go out
And they get up at
spend
3 in the morning to order it when they
Absolutely,
can.
yeah.
Yeah. been
This
there.
year, those people aren't necessarily moved. Some are, maybe 10%, maybe 20% are buying the larger one. But
Well, as you said, if it weren't for the larger one,
there's no
that's
reason.
the one big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah.
And I think Apple understood that, so they made a 10s, which is slightly better, and they made the bigger one for the people who want to something different. And the money
10R.
was put on the 10R.
Yeah.
Now the 10R it's a great phone.
Yeah.
It's probably the best phone of the year. It's a higher price than the 8 was and the 7, and then those were $699. Now it's $750, which doesn't seem like much, but it's more.
Right.
I don't care how you want to say, oh, it's only $50, or it's only $3 a month if you have the upgrade program. It's still more money.
Mm-hmm.
And the 10R there's not really a wow factor.
It doesn't move the ball
Yeah.
down the field very much.
And
it's a very nice phone.
It's a
I
great
agree.
phone, but I think people who have a 6 or a 7 look at it and they say, yeah, maybe I'll just wait till next year.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of people, and I'll use an example. I was talking to my mom over Christmas. She has actually it's mine. It's my old 6.
Yeah.
She upgraded. She had a 5, and I gave her my 6, I think, a year ago. And I was talking to her about, because she was talking about her contract was up and blah, blah, blah. Or something was going on with Verizon where she was going to go in the store and look at phones. And I said, are you going to get a new one? She said, I don't think so. She's like, I don't want to pay $700, $800 for a new phone. And I said to her, well, you were always paying that.
Mm-hmm.
You paid $200 up front, but with all the fees and things that were built into your
It was
contract.
hidden. You could
it
tell
was
yourself you were
there.
paying less. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, she doesn't believe me or care because it's not like the bill has gone down, that much. Verizon still, I think the plans are still what they are.
Yeah.
You're getting more data. They're still finding ways to get your $100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And, she basically was just saying that I don't want to spend that much on a phone. And that's what Apple's running into here. Previously, people handed over $200 and walked out with a phone. You can't do that anymore.
Right.
You're spending $50 a month, $40 a month for 2 years. And for a
Or
lot
if you
of
continually
people,
upgrade, it's just perpetual. It's like leasing a
but
phone.
there's
now.
that too. That's the next thing is as a service. They want everything, you're going to be paying Apple forever.
Yeah.
But I think that people are balking at that monthly bill because it's, they're seeing the full cost of the device. And I'm not even saying that it's not, the iPhone is a $700 device. I'm not saying that Apple's gouging you. I'm just saying that there's a reality that has set in now that Apple somehow has to figure out how to get over that hump of perception and purchase.
Well, and I wonder, to sort of tie these two things together, if you've got a company that is charging top dollar for admittedly, very nice hardware and software, but a company that also, when you get that expensive, admittedly nice software and hardware package, can now tell you, it's okay if it's bent or whatever problem. I just think that's a recipe for a real quick decline on Apple's part.
At least I hope that's not going to be the company's policy going forward. I think this is a very specific, who knows, but
the fact that it's been done once, just when you open a door like that, when a company makes a decision like that, however that decision was made or not made, the concern is that the next time, because there will be some future defect in some piece of hardware down the road. Yeah. And Apple, having not gotten a lot of grief for this one, may feel like, well, we got away with it before, we can get away with it again. And again, you're eating into the very base, the people who really most want to buy your product, and you're telling them to stuff it. I don't think that's a good recipe for success.
Yeah, and also in that letter, Tim Cook, it was interesting. He brought up the battery program, which was cheered at the time. Apple took a problem. What happened was, just a quick recap, it came out that the iPhone 6, there was something built into iOS that starting with the iPhone 6, they would lower the performance of the CPU if the battery health.
As the battery health went down,
declined,
they would slow the phone.
If it reached below a certain threshold, they would basically slow down your phone to preserve battery life. They thought this, I don't know what they thought, but their reasons were that this was
that was the argument anyway. That was the public statement anyway.
Now, at the time, people argued, well, they are purposefully slowing down our phones to upgrade, and I didn't believe that line of thinking. The fact that Tim Cook mentioned it in his letter as a reason for slowing sales, perhaps they were onto something.
Well, again, if you're going to think in sort of a conspiratorial way, and you start seeing decisions made this way and solutions that come out the way Apple's rolled these things out, it doesn't dissuade you right away from the conspiracy theories.
And I can tell you what, we're not going to see another battery program anytime soon.
No, I don't think so. All right, so that's the state of Apple right now in early 2019. Oh, I should mention, how are you liking the AirPower? Oh, wait, it's not there. Let's just noting that 2018 came and went. AirPower did not arrive. So another fail as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, they did promise it.
They promised it, and it's not there. So, so Mike, listen, thanks a lot. Like I say, I wanted to get a quick beat on a few things that had happened over the holiday period, especially since they're kind of crazy.
Yeah,
and wacky.
it was a busy season for
it sure was.
for all the wrong
and not in a
reasons.
good way. So we'll have to revisit this at some point down the road. But thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
For now, that's a wrap.